Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. The webinar today is a collaboration between Logistics and Retail IOSH Group and the Railway Group. It's something that we've been planning for quite a while, and it's on the subject of bridge strikes. We've gathered an excellent speaker together, which we will introduce shortly. And we welcome the opportunity for questions, input at the end, but please do it via the Q&A box, as you may have already seen the little pop-up in the chat. To introduce our speaker today, I'd like to welcome on board our chair from the Railway Group. Ed Hodgson is our chair, and I'm going to hand straight across to him and let him introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and also thank you for collaborating on this event, which is quite important to both of us. I've also got Keith Lyle with me from the Railway Group, who's very experienced in this area. But I think it is a very important subject, and it's probably one that we only probably see in the news, but there's probably a lot more that's going to go on that we'll see in the presentation from Yvonne Boyle, who's the asset engineer and the main lead for structures and bridge strikes for Network Rail. So I'd now like to hand over to Yvonne, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, as I was surprised at the level of bridge strikes that actually take place. They're not all on the news. Yvonne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I will start by sharing my screen. So I would like to introduce myself. I'm Yvonne Boyle. I'm a civil engineer in the structures team, structures asset management, and as I'm sure you can hear by my accent, I'm based in Scotland. I previously worked for the Technical Authority in Milton Keynes, who are Network Rail's central function, and that's where I acquired the role of the bridge strike lead. And each region within Network Rail has its own bridge strike champion who deals with the day-to-day issues around bridge strikes, and this tends to lie with the structures team, who are responsible for ensuring the safety and integrity of the structures to allow safe passage of train services. The issue of bridge strikes is really quite sizable for Network Rail. It has been a significant problem. In the past year, pre-pandemic, it was estimated to cost UK PLC £23 million. You can see these are headline figures from the past 2 years. There has been a small reduction from 2019-20 to the past year of 2021. There's been a reduction of 104 strikes. And you can that really equates to something between 4 and 5 strikes per day, every day of the year. And obviously that brings with it a significant amount of disruption to the railway and to the roads network as well. Numbers quoted here relate predominantly to underlying bridges. However, overlying bridges are also affected, and this tends to be with parapet strikes and debris landing on the track, and with underlying bridges it tends to be the effect of overheight vehicles striking the structure. This data has been collected for the last 20 years. You can see in sort of 2007 and 8 there was a peak of the number of strikes, and that sort of corresponds with in the time immediately before the financial crash that occurred around then. The bars are representing the number of strikes, and the wiggly line at the top represents the information from the Department for Transport of HGV billions of vehicle miles per year. You will notice from the previous year to from 2019-20 to 2020-21, there was a significant drop in the number of HGV miles travelled on the roads. However, that's not particularly been mirrored in a reduction in the number of strikes. Obviously, we're operating in strange times with lockdowns occurring and changes to living habits and changes to the transport on the roads too. But the number of bridge strikes has stayed relatively high in comparison to the number of HGV miles that are travelled on the roads. Each year we produce a scorecard, I suppose it is, of the top 10 most struck bridges in that financial year. You can see from this that the top struck bridge at Quadringham Road was struck 19 times in the past year. But what is also worth looking at in this table is numbers 2, 5 and 6, which fall within the central area of the North West and Central region within Network Rail. And within the central area, there is a bridge strike working group who have specifically been put together to address the issue of bridge strikes. The West Midlands it tends to be a distribution hub. There's a considerable amount of HGVs on the road. The structures 2, 4 and 5, 2, 5 and 6 are in that area and have been consistently within the top 10 most struck bridges for the last, for as long as I'm aware. This working group has, they collaborate. It consists of performance team from Network Rail, the structures team, but also the local authority, the police, the train operating companies. And what they've done is looked at specific sites and seen how the issue of bridge strikes can be addressed. And if that means cutting down vegetation in front of signage to make it clearer, and engaging with the Highways Authority and ensuring that any diversion routes are not included and not taken in the bridges that are commonly struck. And another way that they have looked to reduce the number of strikes at these specific bridges is removing distractions for drivers, which is the billboards that are quite often either on the wing walls or at the abutments of the structures. So you can see the reduction in these, the numbers. At Lichfield City is going down from 24 to 18, and at Bromford Road down from 24 to 13, and Watling Street down from 25 to 11. So there has been a degree of success with this collaboration, and the Central Working Group meets every 8 weeks to discuss the strikes that have occurred and why they're occurring and what they can do to address them. The total cost that's listed here relates only to the Schedule 8 costs. So Schedule 8 costs are effectively compensation to the train operating companies that Network Rail provides when infrastructure is not available for running a train service. A number of the most struck bridges, the Schedule 8 costs will be relatively low because they're commonly struck. There's a sort of slick process in place to get things up and running again so that there's minimal disruption to the railway. The next slide looks at the highest cost for bridge strikes. These figures are artificially low for this past year, 2021, with a reduced service across the network generally. In the year 1920, the highest cost for a single strike was at 1.1 million rather than at 155,000. And you can see from this table the highest number of delay minutes doesn't always equate to the highest total cost attributed to the bridge strike. This is because it's relevant to route criticality, and there's an algorithm applied for the number of delay minutes and how much the compensation that the train operating companies should receive. You can see at number 3, the structure at Ampthill Road, which is in the sort of Bedford area and on a commuter route, had considerably less delay minutes than the structure at Haymarket near Edinburgh, which is on the East Coast main line, but had comparable costs attributed to it. And that's down to the route criticality and, as I said, the compensation that's paid to the train operating companies. The type of vehicle that is involved in bridge strike, we do rely on members of the public who call in bridge strikes. We rely on bridge strike examiners and bridge strike nominees, as well as haulage companies and the people who have been involved in the bridge strike to call in and provide the information. So obviously not all of it, not every bridge strike is reported, but as well as that, not all types of vehicle are recorded at the time. But from what is recorded, you can see there's a sizable amount of bridge strikes that are attributed to HGVs. And this trend tends to be similar year on year, the number of HGVs that are involved, the percentage. Over the year, we look at the railway works in 4-week periods, and that's how bridge strikes have reported. So period 1 commences in April, and this bar chart shows the number of strikes per 4-week period. And you can see period 1 in this chart is considerably lower than the rest, and it corresponds with April 2020, when we were we'd only just started lockdown. That was the first lockdown during this pandemic. But what's also generally obvious over the year are these 3 peaks that occur. and the peaks occur in period 5, corresponds with the August holidays, and relief drivers and drivers who are possibly unfamiliar with the routes that they're driving. Period 7 corresponds with the October clock change, and for whatever reason, we do tend to note that there is a bit of a spike in the number of bridge strikes during that time. And period 9 corresponds with the Black Friday shopping and the start of Christmas shopping, and increased vehicles and HGVs and deliveries on the road. So these are the period bridge strikes for 2020, and we can have a look at the first 6 months of this year in the next slide. So the blue bars are the previous 2021 information, and the orange bars correspond with the 21-22 information that we have. And you can see period 1, which is in April of this year, when we were again just coming out of lockdown. There's a considerable spike. Although what can be seen is that for each 4-week period, the number of bridge strikes does tend to be higher each time. I think as well, it may be worth considering that the period 1 figures is possibly linked to Brexit and new drivers and changes to staff within haulage companies and that sort of thing. So we've looked at the impact that bridge strikes have on the railway, the cost that it has, the delays that are incurred, etc. I have some case studies that we can look at, and these are general sort of types of bridge strike that do occur. For this one, this occurred in Pontypool in Wales, and this sort of type of bridge strike is relatively common. A low loader carrying construction plant, the signed height within the cab does not correspond with the height of the plant that it's carrying, and so the plant strikes the bridge. In this case, the damage was relatively minimal. However, the type of structure that it is means that there were 191 delay minutes attributed to it, and more than £5,000 in delay costs. The next one, again, is a relatively common type of bridge strike, where an overheight vehicle comes into contact with a skew structure, one that is at an angle across the carriageway. Commonly with overheight vehicles coming into contact with skew structures, overturning of the vehicle occurs. And in this instance, you can see there's not any sort of pavement of note beneath the structure, which would reduce the likelihood of pedestrians being present. However, in the past, at a different skew bridge, there was a fatality where a pedestrian was crushed by an overturned vehicle. So this impact on the general public is not specifically limited to delays and cancellations and disruption on the road. People, aside from the driver of the overnight vehicle, have been injured and even killed in the course of a bridge strike. And obviously with bridge strikes and the general public, the most at risk is when a bridge strike occurs due to a double-decker bus. I have a couple of case studies here where double-decker buses have been involved. In this case, the bus was on a diversionary route. It had been high winds and a tree had fallen across the road and blocked it. So the diversionary route, whether it was given to the driver or whether he was directed on it by the highway authority, I'm not entirely certain. But what did occur, he approached these, at this particular structure, there's an arch bridge, a masonry arch bridge, and a metallic deck side by side. He approached the metallic deck underneath the arch structure, and the whole of the top deck was taken off the bridge. This was actually called into control by a train driver who saw the debris on the line and had assumed it had blown onto the line. You can see in the second from the left photograph the top deck of the bus that had been taken off, sheared right off by the metallic deck. In this instance, 8 people were injured, and unfortunately there was a fatality of a passenger who was on the top deck of the bus. And following on from this, the driver of the bus was jailed for 2.5 years for death by dangerous driving. The other case study for the double-deck bus that occurred in Winchester in September of last year. And again, the bus has struck the bridge, and virtually the whole of the top deck has been taken off of the vehicle. In this case, there were 57 school children on board, and the driver was apparently taking a shortcut. He was running late and had decided that this was a good idea to take this shortcut. There were considerable number of injuries in this bridge strike. 12 children had minor injuries. However, 3 children required surgery for life-changing injuries. And in this case, the driver was found guilty of causing serious injury by dangerous driving and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. So, the sobering information from the effect of double-deck bus strikes on Network Rail structures. What does Network Rail do when a bridge strike is reported? All of our structures have a bridge ID plate attached to them. There is a bridge number, a structure number that is identified on the plate, as well as a phone number which takes you through to control, so that the bridge can be identified on the event of a bridge strike, and control can take the relevant steps that are particular to that structure. Each structure is assessed for its robustness and is given a categorisation, either red, amber, double amber or green, depending on how robust the structure is to horizontal impact. For red dispensation structures, all movements on the bridge must be stopped until the bridge is examined. And for amber, double amber and green, there is the first train passes over at 5 miles per hour, and depending on the categorisation, the subsequent trains can either pass at slower speeds or at normal speeds. And again, as I say, this depends on the robustness of the structure. So masonry arches tend to be more robust and resistant to horizontal impact, and will tend to be green structures, which would mean that no action is required and trains can continue to run without any delays on the occasion of a bridge strike occurring. So in 2014, there was a survey carried out by HGV drivers who were involved in bridge strikes that occurred on Network Rail assets. You can see from this pie chart, the blue section is the largest, with drivers not knowing the vehicle height. And the second largest section is poor route planning, in that they don't know, they've not considered low bridges in the route planning. So that takes up, adds up to more than 50% of the causes of bridge strikes. It is, however, a legal requirement for any vehicle that is greater than 3 metres in height to have the overall travelling height of the vehicle displayed within the cab. However, a common issue with this is that the cab height is displayed within the cab, and there's not particularly the consideration given to the load that's been the load that's been carried, or the trailer that's attached to the cab. And so this difference, as you'd seen previously with the case study with the low loader and the plant that it was carrying, the height that was displayed within the cab didn't take into account the height of the plant. And that brings us on to traffic signs. Bridge height signage is, believe it or not, the responsibility of the local authority or the highway authority. This is laid out in the bridge strike protocol document that is agreed by the Bridge Strike Prevention Group, which includes asset owners and highway authorities and local authorities. The type of sign that is required on a bridge is laid out under the Traffic Signs Manual, which is part of the design manual for roads and bridges. And this indicates the type of sign that is required at specific structures, and it also indicates how the headroom clearance is calculated. In that, what is sometimes seen is not a straight conversion from metres to feet. Metres is measured, and then there's a specific process that is followed to come up with what is put on the sign. And similarly, a different process is used for the imperial measurement. But what is useful to know is that for each of them, what is displayed on the sign height will generally be in the region of 150 millimetres or 6 inches lower than the actual height of the structure. And similarly with road signage in general, a triangular sign is a warning sign, and a circular sign is prohibits the passing of vehicles above that the height that's signed on it. So what else are Network Rail doing to reduce bridge strike incidents? So we do presentations like this. A few weeks ago, I did a similar presentation for an insurance group who underwrite haulage insurance. We have a plethora of online resources. I've put the link in this slide that can be used for driver CPC training, that can be used for contacting the bridge strike champions in each region. There's lots of different information that's available on the Network Rail website. But generally, the strategy is to follow the 4 E's, the picture that's on the right of this slide. So what we're looking at, carrying out some education. We do some engineering. So the engineering comes in with liaison with the Highways Authority and the signage that's there, the possibility of collision protection beams that are getting put up, removing driver distractions. So the next E is enablement. So we provide information for route planning tools, giving locational information on bridges that are commonly struck. We provide information to the Truckers Atlas, which we're in discussion with at the moment to update the information on that. So that sort of information is included in for satellite navigation and for fleet telematics as well. And then there's the enforcement side of things. We work quite closely with the traffic commissioners in providing information on bridge strikes in order that enforcement action can be taken against both drivers and operators. The traffic commissioners have the authority to remove professional licences and to take away operators' licences. And as well as that, we have been working in the last 6 months with the British Transport Police and produced a protocol document, which is a guidance document for police who attend bridge strike events, such that sufficient information can be collected and the right process is followed to ensure the safety of the operation of the railway. And that is just a screenshot of the bridge strike protocol document. So this was developed over around 6 months and was presented to the National Police Chiefs Council, where it was accepted and is now being rolled out throughout the country for use in all the different police forces that are throughout the country. And I'm sure you'll be glad to hear that that is the end of my presentation, and I will stop sharing my screen and maybe take some questions if there are any specific questions that I can answer.
There are certainly some questions. Thank you, Yvonne. So Yvonne, first question is from Robert Butcher. He says there's been recent announcements by the government to streamline HGV training to address the shortage of drivers. Is this a cause for concern, given that training may be less exhaustive than it was previously?
I think that remains to be seen until we can have a look at the figures and see what sort of impact that it will have. I understand that the streamlining of it is mostly around being able to reverse the vehicles rather than read specific signs. So we would hope that it doesn't have such a great impact, but it really remains to be seen at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that, Yvonne. Another question from Malcolm Dobell regarding the Schedule 8 payments that you shared on your page there. They seem very, very small. There must be other costs such as impact on teams to attend, carry out repairs, etc. So two questions really. What does that cost include? And secondly, are those costs recovered from vehicle insurers?
So I think it was about 6 years ago, there was a High Court ruling that allowed Network Rail to pursue the operators or drivers who had caused a bridge strike for the Schedule 8 costs, actually for the total costs that are attributed to bridge strike events. The reason that the Schedule 8 costs are shown is it's really quite difficult to reconcile maintenance costs, repair costs to specific strikes. The bridges that are commonly struck, it can sometimes be an accumulation of damage that finally means that the bridge is stuck. You know, action is not always taken on each individual strike. And so it's really quite difficult to reconcile the cost of a specific strike and the repair costs associated with that. And that's why really the only the delay and cancellation costs are shown. And you are quite right in that the delay costs that are shown for this past year are considerably lower than in previous years, but that's down to reduced network operations and the reduced delay and cancellation costs that are associated with it.
Okay. You're absolutely right in terms of cost. It's interesting one. The costs knock on massively. So I used to work for a company called G's, and they're just outside of that Ely bridge, which was on your list. And there've been a number of missed collections and deliveries that firm had as a result of people hitting bridges. So you're right that the costs span wide. Another question from Chris Bain. So do HGV drivers or haulage firms plan the routes, or is a sat nav a key factor in bridge strikes, in your opinion?
It varies from company to company. I attended a public inquiry hearing by one of the traffic commissioners for a bridge strike that had occurred on our network. And what transpired was the driver was given a list of drops to carry out, and he planned his own route. The operator did not plan the route for him. Not all drivers use sat-navs, and I think as well there's a degree of familiarity with local areas as well that comes into not feeling the need to plan routes too, and really that it's different from company to company. Some companies do plan the route and do take into account low structures, but as I say, the public inquiry hearing that I attended, the company didn't carry out any planning. They left it up to the driver.
Sure. Okay. Another question from Malcolm. I think it's quite an interesting question. Have you ever done any work engaging with drivers who have hit bridges to really understand why that happens? So from a human factors perspective.
Yeah, I think I think it may be on the Network Rail website, or it's definitely available online. But a driver actually did contact us a number of years ago and agreed to make a video of what happened when he struck the bridge and what happened after, and the action that was taken. And I think in that case, the traffic commissioner did look on it favourably as something that he was doing to try and make the situation slightly better.
Okay. Just a question here from Tim. Are there any plans to work with traffic management companies? Oh, sorry, so just put a question in, let's move that. Traffic companies, there's some experience that Tim's had with dealing with bridge strikes is that there's been some poor diversion routes. So just talk through a little bit about how we work with companies to ensure the diversion routes are acceptable.
I think that's really an engagement that that is between Network Rail and the highways authorities. The highways authorities are putting in the diversion routes. They are specifying where these are occurring, and so it does become apparent really quite quickly where that's an issue, and that's something that the Central Working Group have addressed. That one of the bridges that was within their remit was continually being struck because of these diversion routes, and when the highways authorities were made aware of it, alternatives were put in place.
Okay. Questions coming from Mavis. How many strikes are related to foreign drivers or those that are less experienced with UK roads compared to UK companies?
Unfortunately, that's not sort of data that we would collect. It's I would imagine a GDPR issue as well. We don't particularly have information on whether the driver is self-employed or employed, or their nationality, or really any great deal of personal information.
Okay, just taking the bare bones as such of the vehicle and the company involved.
Can I offer some more information on that? There's what we do have information on is that cross-channel ferries and the Channel Tunnel have limits on height, and the majority of those are restricted to 4.2 meters. Actually, about half of strikes occur over that figure. So the majority of strikes are related to vehicles that are originating in the UK, and we also know that the majority of the vehicles that strike our bridges are UK owned. So whilst we don't have specific figures, we can say that I think perhaps from analysis, we've come to the conclusion that the influence of foreign drivers may be slightly overstated. That it's a UK challenge.
Excellent, thanks for that.
Thanks.
A question from Claire. Claire used to be a bridge strike inspector for the railway, and Claire's question is, are there any plans to show drivers the real effect of bridge strikes on the track, which will be much more extreme than it appears from the road level? And Claire's comment here is it may increase people's understanding of the true impact.
Sorry, can you say that question again?
Yeah, so are there any plans to show drivers the effect of the bridge strike on the track, which can often be much more extreme than it appears from the road level?
Quite often, yeah, I possibly should have included that in the presentation to show that sometimes with metallic decks, the track's taken out of alignment and there is the possibility of train derailment occurring. That is a possibility, and I will take that on board and add it in for the next presentation that I do.
Excellent. Okay. A question, so I'm just making a note here. So questions come in from Neil Wallace. Traffic signs contain high vehicle road markings to guide them to the centre of the road under arch bridges where appropriate. However, these road markings are sometimes not visible or they're in very poor condition. So Neil's question is, does Network Rail take up those matters with the Highway Authority?
There does tend to be a liaison with the local authority or the highway authority, whoever owns the road beneath the structure. And if there is an issue with the road markings, it's picked up with either the annual visual inspection of the structure or at the time of the bridge strike examination that takes place.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm coming to the end of the questions, I think now. So one from Dave Cousins. Transport for London have the ability to prosecute drivers for impact, and Dave's involved in monitoring systems that detect impact and record for video evidence. So Dave's question is, does Network Rail have a similar system and procedure in place?
We do have a number of structures with monitoring on them. There are different types of monitoring too. So ones with cameras attached that will start recording when an impact has occurred, and ones that where the impact is notified without the cameras, sort of thing, and that, you know, an examiner sent out it sets up an alert in control, and an examiner sent out to examine the bridge and check that it remains safe for the passage of trains. These have varying degrees of success, to be honest. Even with those, even with the signage that sometimes is ahead of the structure that lights up as warning signs, these sometimes do still get ignored. But with the monitoring, we need the information on the vehicle that's involved and the company that's involved, and we don't always have that information. But where we do have that information, the performance team will pursue to get any delay costs back on the event of the bridge strike.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that, Bon. So everybody on the call today, I think I've answered, sorry, I think I've asked or proposed the questions that haven't been answered during your presentation, Yvonne. So I think that concludes the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhys. And that leaves me, Yvonne, to say a massive thank you on behalf of IOSH for that really incredibly informative presentation that you've given us, to really highlight the seriousness and the large issue that we've got, and also the collaborative work that needs to happen to provide a solution. So thank you for your time, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of our participants today that that was really, really insightful. On behalf of IOSH Logistics and Retail Committee and the IOSH Railway Group, thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in 2022, because it leaves it to me now to wish you all a Merry Christmas. So thank you for joining us today.